The first thing you should know is that I never believed in fate. I believed in deadlines, in double espressos gulped at 3 in the morning, in footnotes that ate away my sanity. Love? That was for people who had the time to waste it. At least, that's what I told myself until the night a stranger with a guitar made me forget the thesis I had sworn my soul to. He was standing under a flickering streetlight outside the campus library, strumming chords that seemed too tender for a world as cruel as ours. My head was buzzing with citations, statistical models, and the weight of my future. Yet the sound of his music cut through everything, soft as a whisper, sharp as a blade. I told myself I would walk past, ignore him, bury myself again in academic rigor. But my feet betrayed me. The problem wasn't just his music, it was him. His smile carried that reckless warmth only the young dared to wear, the kind that made you think maybe the world wasn't as cold as it always pretended to be. I should have known then, you don't walk past someone like him without consequences. I was Daniel Hayes, 28, graduate student at Columbia, drowning under the weight of a dissertation that had become less about knowledge and more about survival. I had sworn on sleepless nights and broken promises that I would not let anything or anyone derail me. And yet, there he was, Ethan Carter, 22, a struggling musician whose songs could pull secrets out of stone. "Rough night?" he asked me the first time, pausing mid-song when he noticed me staring. His voice was low, easy, like it had no right to be that kind to a stranger. I laughed, a sharp, bitter thing. Define rough. That's how it started, 2 words, a smirk, and a string of nights where I found myself lingering on the steps of the library, listening to him play instead of finishing another chapter. You'd think love, or whatever this was, would bloom gently. Didn't. Collided into me like a storm I had no shelter from. He made me laugh when I was too tired to breathe. He made me want things I had buried under academic ambition. He made me ache with the possibility of losing everything I had worked for. Because that was the deal, wasn't it? Success demanded sacrifice. And love was the most expensive sacrifice of them all. But Ethan didn't care about deals or sacrifices. He cared about moments. About making music even when nobody was listening. About staring at the sky at 2 in the morning because the stars deserved attention. About me in ways that terrified me more than any failed dissertation ever could. The first time he reached for my hand, it was like my pulse forgot its rhythm. I snatched it back, muttering excuses about focus and future, but the warmth lingered, haunting. "Why do you keep running?" he asked me one night, his eyes searching mine as if I were a puzzle worth solving. "Because I can't afford to stop," I whispered. But the truth? I was already slowing down. What nobody tells you about falling in love with another man in America, especially in families like mine, with traditions as rigid as concretius, that it isn't just about 2 hearts colliding. It's about the whole world crashing down around you, asking you to choose sides. My parents wanted a son who finished his PhD, became a professor, upheld the name. They didn't want the son who lingered under streetlights, listening to forbidden music in the arms of another man. And yet, every time I tried to walk away, Ethan found his way back. At coffee shops, strumming in Central Park, humming outside the graduate hall. It wasn't coincidence. It was persistence. His presence was an answer to a question I had been too afraid to ask. What if I could have both? But the more I let him in, the more dangerous it felt. Professors were watching. My advisor noticed my late submissions. Whispers floated in the air, rumors sharp as knives. The cruelest one came from a colleague who sneered at me. "Maybe you should date your musician instead of writing your thesis." I laughed it off in public. But that night, alone, I broke. I told Ethan it was over. I told him I couldn't love him, couldn't afford him, couldn't risk him. I used every cruel word I could muster because I thought pain now was better than destruction later. His eyes darkened, his smile collapsed, and for the first time since I met him, he looked older than me. "Daniel," he said quietly, "you're lying to both of us." And then he left, guitar case swinging like a coffin at his side. The silence that followed was louder than any music he had ever played. I buried myself in work. I locked myself in my apartment, feeding on instant noodles and hollow determination. The pages piled higher, the words came faster, but none of it felt like mine anymore. My thesis was a monster, and I was feeding it pieces of my soul. But love isn't something you cut clean. It lingers, a shadow at the edges of your vision. I kept hearing his songs in places he wasn't. I kept remembering the way his hand felt inches from mine. I kept drowning in a life that was suddenly so much emptier than I had realized. And then, on the night I thought I'd finally lost myself, I heard it. A guitar. Outside my window. I froze. My pen slipped from my hand. I pulled back the curtain, and there he was. Ethan. Standing on the sidewalk, eyes lifted to me, strumming the same song he played the first night we met. My chest cracked open. My choices shattered. And in that moment, I knew, no thesis, no degree, no promise could be worth a life without him. I should have slammed the window shut. Should have told him to stop, to go, to disappear before the neighbors noticed. But I didn't. I just stood there, frozen in the crossfire between my ambition and my heart, listening to the one song that could dismantle every wall I had built. His voice was quiet, almost trembling, but it carried up to me like a prayer. Each note sliced through the silence, unearthing the truth I tried so hard to bury. He wasn't asking for anything, not forgiveness, not promises. He was just reminding me that he existed, that we existed, and that no dissertation in the world could erase what had already happened between us. I didn't realize my hands were shaking until I saw the way the window frame blurred. My eyes stung, hot with tears I refused to let fall. Ethan, I whispered into the night, though I knew he couldn't hear me. The music stopped. He lowered the guitar slowly, his face turned up toward mine. For one suspended second, the city seemed to fade, and there was only us. His eyes dark, steady, unflinching caught mine like anchors. And then he smiled. Not the reckless grin he wore in the beginning, but something softer, sadder, more resolute. He didn't shout or call my name. He just gave me that smile, swung the guitar back onto his shoulder, and started walking away. I wanted to run down after him. God, I wanted to, but my feet wouldn't move. Fear rooted me in place. Fear of what it meant to choose him. Fear of what I'd lose if I did. And so, once again, I let him slip through the cracks of my cowardice. That night I wrote until dawn. Words poured out of me like a fever, sentences stitched together in desperation rather than brilliance. Every page was haunted by him. Every conclusion I wrote felt hollow, every argument a shadow. When the sun rose, I sat back, exhausted, and realized I wasn't writing for myself anymore. I was writing against myself. The days blurred after that. I avoided the library steps where he used to play. I switched coffee shops, changed my routes, tried to erase him from the geography of my life. But the city was merciless, it kept giving me pieces of him. A busker on the subway strumming the same chords. A denim jacket hung in a thrift store window. A lyric scrawled on a bathroom wall that felt like something he would have said. One afternoon, I overheard a pair of students in the cafe whispering about him. That kid Ethan? He got a gig downtown. Small bar, but still big step up from playing outside the library. My chest twisted. Pride and jealousy collided in me, violent and raw. He was moving forward, and I was still chained to a desk, pretending my life was enough. That night I dreamed of him, dreamed of sitting in that bar, the music swelling around us, his voice filling every inch of me until there was no room left for fear. When I woke, the emptiness beside me was unbearable. I started showing up at the bar. Not inside, not yet. I would linger across the street, hidden in shadows, watching as people spilled out laughing, glowing, carrying pieces of his music with them. And then he would emerge, guitar case in hand, looking tired but alive in a way I hadn't seen before. He never noticed me, or maybe he did and he chose not to. Both possibilities burned equally. It was my advisor who broke the illusion of control I had left. He cornered me in his office, fingers tapping impatiently on my draft. "Daniel," he said, voice clipped, "you're unraveling. This isn't your best work. I don't know what's distracting you, but fix iter you won't finish on time. The shame hit like a slap. I nodded, murmured promises, but inside I was collapsing. Because I knew the distraction wasn't something I could cut out like a tumor. It was a person. It was Ethan. The next week I gave in. I walked into the bar. It was smaller than I imagined. Dim lights, scratched tables, the air thick with beer and cigarette smoke. But when he stepped onto the tiny stage, the room transformed. He wasn't just a boy with a guitar anymore. He was a force. His music wrapped around every soul in that room, binding us together in quiet awe. And then saw me. Our eyes locked mid-song. His fingers faltered just slightly on the strings, but he didn't stop. He just kept playing, voice steady, gaze fixed on me as if daring me to stay, daring me to admit I still belonged there. I stayed. Through every song, every chord, every lyric that felt like it was meant for me. When he finally stepped down, people swarmed him, clapping his back, praising his talent. I lingered in the corner, unsure if I had the right to approach. But he came to me. "So," he said, breathless, sweat shining at his temples. "You finally stopped hiding." I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came. He laughed, a tired, incredulous sound. "You know, Daniel, you're not the only one who can break hearts." I moved on. Or at least I tried to. The sting of his words sliced deeper than I expected. "Ethan, don't." His voice was sharp, but his eyes wavered. "Don't say you're sorry. Don't say you were protecting me or yourself or your damn thesis. You made your choice." The bar noise swallowed us. But for me, the world narrowed to his trembling hands and the defiance in his voice. "I made a mistake," I said finally. Silence stretched. Then, softly, "You think mistakes can just be undone?" I reached for him, but he stepped back, shaking his head. "You want me now because you're scared. But I can't." His breath caught. "I can't be the thing you run to when you're drowning. I deserve more than that." And with that, he was gone again, leaving me stranded in the wreckage of my own choices. That night, I didn't sleep. For the first time, I asked myself the question I had avoided all along. What if finishing the thesis wasn't worth losing him? The answer terrified me, because it wasn't. The following week felt like living inside a cage I had built myself. I woke every morning with a hollowness in my chest, dragged myself to campus, sat through endless hours of editing, rewriting, reformatting, convincing myself that the work mattered more than the ache inside me. It didn't work. The truth was inescapable. I had pushed away the only person who made me feel alive. The thesis, this monster I had been feeding with every sleepless night, felt emptier than ever. Even my advisor noticed. "You look like hell, Daniel," he muttered one afternoon, flipping through my latest draft. "I don't care if you finish on time. If you hand in something soulless, it won't matter." Soulless. The word lingered. That was exactly what I had become. But I couldn't just walk back to Ethan after the way I had shattered him. I remembered the tremor in his voice at the bar, the way he said he deserved more. He was right. He did. I couldn't ask him to pick up the broken pieces of me again. Still, I found myself haunted by him. In the quiet spaces of the library, I'd hear phantom notes of his guitar. On my walk home, I'd imagine seeing his figure leaning against a lamppost. My heart was constantly betraying me, reminding me that love was not a switch I could flick off at will. One night, I wandered into the rain without an umbrella, desperate for something to drown out the noise in my head. My sneakers soaked, my clothes clung, but I didn't care. And then, like a cruel trick, I heard it. Music. It wasn't my imagination this time. Down the block, outside a cafe, Ethan was playing. His hair was damp from the drizzle, his denim jacket darkened by water, but he played anyway. People huddled beneath awnings to listen, their faces lit with admiration. And I stood frozen, heart pounding, torn between running to him and vanishing into the storm. When he finished, the crowd clapped, coins clattered into his case, and he glanced up. Our eyes met. He didn't smile. He didn't frown either. He just looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Tired, guarded, wary. I raised a hand halfway, an instinctive gesture of apology, but he snapped his guitar case shut and walked past me without a word. That rejection gutted me more than any insult ever could. It wasn't anger. It was indifference. And somehow that was worse. I went home that night and stared at my half-finished thesis, the cursor blinking like a ticking clock. For the first time in years, I asked myself why I was doing this. To prove something? To whom? My parents? The professors? Myself? And if I succeeded, what then? A framed degree, a job offer, a future built on exhaustion. Would it keep me warm at night? Would it play music under streetlights when the world felt too heavy? The answer was as sharp as it was terrifying. No. I tried to fight it, tried to bury myself in deadlines and academic pressure, but the cracks kept widening. By day I worked. By night, I wandered the city, hoping to stumble into him again, even if he wouldn't look at me. And then, fate or maybe cruelty stepped in. My parents called. It was a Sunday evening, the phone buzzing with the name I hadn't seen in weeks. I hesitated before answering, already bracing myself. Daniel. My father's voice boomed, clipped as always. Your mother and I have been worried. You don't sound well in your emails. I'm fine, I lied. You need to focus. This thesis is everything. Do you understand? No distractions. No nonsense. The pause after nonsense was deliberate. I knew what he meant. I didn't ask how he knew. Maybe whispers had reached him. Maybe parents always sense the things their children try to hide. Dad, I started, but he cut me off. Promise me, Daniel. No more foolishness. You're so close. Don't throw it away. I hung up before he could demand my word. And then I truly broke for the first time. Rage, grief, longing, shame. I punched the desk, scattering papers, sending my coffee crashing to the floor. The sound echoed through the empty apartment, a hollow punctuation mark on my failure. The truth crashed down on me with brutal clarity. I could finish the thesis, get the degree, make my parents proud, and still spend the rest of my life haunted by the absence of one boy with a guitar. Or I could risk everything for him. It wasn't really a choice anymore. The next night, I went to the bar again. He was there, of course, on that same tiny stage, filling the room with his voice. I sat closer this time, right at the edge of the stage, forcing myself into his line of sight. And when he looked at me, I didn't look away. After the set, he came down, sweat on his temples, his guitar slung against his back. He stopped in front of me, expression unreadable. What do you want, Daniel? His voice was steady, but the way his fingers tightened around the strap betrayed him. You, I said. The word was raw, unpolished, desperate. I want you. He laughed bitterly. You had me, and you let me go. I was afraid, I admitted. Afraid of failing, of disappointing my parents, of choosing wrong. But the truth is, my voice cracked. I already failed. Without you, I've been failing every day. The bar noise swelled around us, but it felt like silence pressed in, waiting for his answer. Ethan's jaw clenched. You think words fix everything? That you can show up and say you're sorry and suddenly I should just... He broke off, shaking his head. Do you even know what it cost me, Daniel? To try to stop loving you. My chest tightened. I know I don't deserve another chance. But if you still feel even a piece of what I feel, then let me try. Please, let me fight for you this time. For a long, agonizing moment, he just stared at me. His eyes shimmered in the dim light, conflicted, wounded, hopeful all at once. And then he whispered, "Prove it." Before I could respond, he walked away, swallowed by the crowd. But this time, instead of despair, I felt something else. Resolve. Because now he hadn't shut me out. He had given me a chance. A small one, a fragile one, but a chance. And I was going to take it. Prove it. Those two words followed me like a shadow, heavier than any deadline, louder than any lecture. I had begged him for another chance, and instead of slamming the door shut, Ethan had left it cracked open. But an open door meant nothing unless I had the courage to step through. I didn't sleep that night. For once, it wasn't because of my thesis. It was because of the promise I made myself. If I wanted Ethan, truly wanted him, then I couldn't keep living like a ghost in my own life. The next morning, I went to see my advisor. My draft sat heavy in my bag, but heavier still was the truth I needed to speak. "Professor Reynolds," I said, standing in his cluttered office with my hands trembling. "I can't write this thesis the way I've been forcing myself to. Not like this." He raised an eyebrow. "You're telling me this now?" "I'll finish," I rushed to add. "But it has to mean something. Otherwise, it's just words on a page." For a long time, he just studied me. Finally, he sighed. "Maybe you're finally starting to sound like a scholar." I didn't tell him that it wasn't scholarship fueling might was love. Over the next weeks, I worked differently. Not harder, not longer. Differently. I wrote about the music of social movements, about how voices, literal voices, shape history. Every citation led me back to Ethan. Every argument pulled me closer to what he represented. I poured my heart into the pages, not just my intellect. For the first time, the work felt alive. But proving myself to him wasn't about the thesis alone. I went to every gig he played. Sometimes he saw me, sometimes he didn't. But I was there. I tipped more than I could afford. I clapped until my hands stung. And when strangers stopped him on the street to praise his music, I stood back, proud, as though their words were mine to give. Still, he kept his distance. His eyes softened when they landed on me, but his steps carried him the other way. He was protecting himself, I knew, and I had to earn the right to break down that wall. So I did something reckless, something my old self would never have dared. I wrote a chapter of my thesis about him. Not his name, not his story exactly, but about the power of an individual's music to pierce through silence, to challenge the narratives we're forced to accept. I wrote about love as resistance, about music as survival, about him. And then, one night, I asked for the stage. It was at the same bar where he played weekly. My heart hammered in my chest as I stepped up, clutching nothing but a single page of notes. The crowd murmured, confused, and Ethan looked at me from the back, suspicion written all over his face. "I'm not a musician," I began, voice shaking, "but I study voices. And sometimes, if you're lucky, a voice comes along that changes you. That makes you see the world differently. That makes you see yourself differently." I didn't look at the audience. I looked at him. And when I found that voice, I almost destroyed it. Out of fear. Out of cowardice. But I'm here now to say I was wrong. And to say that some things some people are worth more than any thesis, any degree, any approval I thought I needed. The room was silent. My throat burned. And then, slowly, Ethan stood. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were wet. He didn't come to the stage. He didn't smile. He just walked out. The silence broke me. But then I realized it wasn't rejection. It was too much. He needed time. The weeks that followed were agony. I finished my thesis, submitted it, defended it. And somehow, in the haze of exhaustion and uncertainty, I passed. I was officially Dr. Daniel Hayes. But the diploma in my hand felt weightless without him beside me. And then, on graduation day, as I stood on the steps surrounded by cheering classmates and proud parents, I heard it. A guitar. I turned. There he was, standing at the bottom of the steps, strumming softly, his denim jacket catching the sunlight. The crowd parted, confused at first, then charmed. He wasn't playing for them. He was playing for me. I dropped the diploma. I ran. When I reached him, I didn't hesitate this time. I cupped his face, rain or tears streaking down his cheeks, and kissed him like my life depended on it. The crowd erupted, some clapped, some gasped, some turned away. None of it mattered. When we finally broke apart, breathless, he whispered, "You proved it." And I laughed through my tears. "No, you proved it. That love doesn't ruin us. It saves us." He smiled then, wide and unguarded, the way he had that very first night under the streetlight. And this time I didn't let go. We built a life after that. Not perfect, not easy, but real. I taught, he played, and sometimes our worlds collided in ways that felt almost magical, his songs filling the lecture halls when I dared invite him. my research shaping the way his music found its audience. Our families took time. My parents resisted, of course. But slowly, as they saw I was happier than I had ever been, their anger gave way to reluctant acceptance. Not because they fully understood, but because our love refused to be erased. Years later, when Ethan played his first big venue, I sat in the front row, tears streaming, watching the boy who once sang under flickering streetlights command a stage of thousands. He looked out into the crowd, found me, and smiled that same smile he gave me the night he walked into my heart. And I knew then, as I know now, the Thesis gave me a future. But Ethan gave me a life.